Are you a fan of adventure games? Do you ever find yourself lost in a virtual world, battling mythical creatures and exploring vast landscapes? While video games provide an escape from reality, have you ever stopped to wonder what it would be like if those adventures were real? Well, in this video, we're going to explore the dark and dangerous side of adventuring in real life. From physical dangers to mental and emotional hurdles, we'll look at 10 reasons why adventuring in video games would be terrible if it was real. So if you're ready to peel back the veil and see what adventuring is truly like in real life, then keep watching. Reason number 1 is danger. Adventuring would be extremely hazardous. There are countless hazards that adventurers could encounter, including dangerous creatures, environmental hazards, and hostile human populations. Dangerous creatures like bears, wolves, snakes, and other wild animals can pose a serious threat to adventurers. Even more dangerous creatures like lions, tigers, and other predators could be lurking around every corner. And it's not even considering the dangers posed by mythical creatures that are often featured in video games, like dragons, giants, and other fantasy monsters. Traps and other environmental hazards could pose a serious threat to adventurers too. In most games, traps are easy to spot and disarm, but in real life, traps could be much more difficult to detect and disarm. Adventurers could encounter deadly traps like booby traps, trap wires, pitfalls, which could cause serious injury or death. Hostile human populations could also pose a serious threat to adventurers. In most games, players often encounter bandits and other hostile groups, but they can usually be defeated with relative ease. In real life, hostile human groups would be much more difficult to deal with. They could even be armed with weapons like guns and knives, making them even more dangerous. Reason number 2 is limited resources. In video games, players often have access to an abundance of resources like health potions and food that can be used to restore health and stamina. In many cases, these resources are readily available from merchants or can be found in chests and other loot drops. This abundance of resources can make adventuring seem like a breeze, but in real life, things would be very different. Resources like food and water would be much more limited, and adventurers would need to constantly search for these essential supplies to survive. This would add an entirely new level of difficulty to adventuring, as adventurers would need to carefully plan their routes and supplies to avoid running out of food or water. Without access to food and water, adventurers could suffer from dehydration, starvation, and other serious health problems that could be fatal. Furthermore, finding food and water in the wild is not an easy task. In many cases, adventurers would need to hunt, fish, or gather plants to obtain the sustenance needed. This would require knowledge of local flora and fauna, as well as the ability to hunt and fish effectively. Even finding a clean water source could be a challenge in certain environments, such as deserts or Arctic regions. Reason number 3 is no respawn. One of the most significant differences between adventuring in video games and adventuring in real life is the consequences of death. In video games, death is often a minor setback at worst. Players can simply reload from a previous save point and continue where they left off with no lasting consequences. However, in real life, death is permanent and there's no opportunity to reload from the previous save point. The inability to reload after death in real life is a significant factor that makes adventuring much more dangerous. In games, players can take risks without having to worry too much about the consequences. They can jump off cliffs, fight dangerous creatures, and take on difficult tasks without fear of permanent injury or death. However, in real life, taking unnecessary risks can have serious consequences. Adventuring in real life requires a much greater degree of caution and preparation than adventuring in games. Every decision and action must be carefully considered, and potential consequences of each decision must be weighed. The risk of encountering dangerous creatures, falling off cliffs, or getting lost in the wilderness are all very real, and adventurers must be prepared to face them all. Furthermore, the consequences of death in real life are not limited to the individuals who dies. Friends and family members can be impacted by the loss, and the community may suffer. The loss of a skilled adventurer can have a significant impact on the community, as that individual may have been a valuable resource for hunting, gathering, or fishing. Reason number 4 is no save points. In games, save files are often used as a tool to avoid making poor choices. Players can create a save file at any point in the game, allowing them to go back and redo any mistakes that they might make. Another advantage of using save files is that it can help players learn from their mistakes. By going back and replaying sections of the game, players can analyze what went wrong and try to avoid making the same mistakes again in the future. This can be especially useful in games with complex mechanics or difficult challenges, as it allows players to refine their strategies and improve their skills over time. However, while the use of save files can be beneficial for players, it also has some drawbacks. For one, it can take away from the sense of risk and consequence that is present in real life. In real life, people must live with the consequences of their actions, and mistakes cannot simply be undone with the press of a button. This lack of consequences can make video games less realistic and less engaging. In addition, the use of save files can also lead to a lack of commitment from players. If players know that they can always go back, redo a section of the game, they might not feel as invested in the outcome or their decisions. This can lead to a lack of emotional attachment to the game and make it feel less meaningful overall. Reason number 5 is lack of guidance. Players are often given clear objectives and maps to follow. These tools help guide players throughout the game world and make it easier for them to progress the game. However, in real life, adventuring would be much more challenging because there would be no clear objectives or maps to follow. Without the aid of a map, adventurers would need to rely solely on their own skills and knowledge to navigate and survive. They would need to be able to read the signs in the environment, such as the position of sun and stars, the behavior of animals, and the types of plants and terrain around them. They would also need to be able to use tools like compasses and maps that they bring with them. In addition to these challenges, there is also the risk of getting lost or becoming stranded. In games, the world is often designed to be self-contained, but in real life, adventurers could find themselves in unfamiliar terrain with no clear path back to civilization. But without a map or clear objectives to follow, it can easy to become disoriented and lose track of one's way. Reason number 6 is loneliness. In video games, companions are often a key part of the adventuring experience. They can aid in combat, help solve puzzles, and provide emotional support throughout the journey. However, in real life, adventuring would most likely be a much more solitary experience. Without the safety of a group, adventurers would need to rely on their own skills and resources to survive. They would not have the same level of emotional support that companions provide in video games. Instead, they would need to be able to find ways to maintain their own mental health and well-being. Furthermore, the isolation of adventuring alone can be mentally taxing. Adventurers may go for long periods of time without seeing other people, and this can lead to feelings of loneliness and depression. In contrast, companions in video games provide a sense of camaraderie and can help make the journey feel less lonely. Additionally, companions can also bring unique skills and abilities to the adventuring experience. In video games, companions often have their own strengths and weaknesses that can complement the player's abilities. This can make the journey feel more balanced and less overwhelming. Reason number 7 is weather. In many games, weather conditions may be little more than a cosmetic feature, with no real impact on the gameplay experience. This is a far cry from the real world, where extreme weather conditions could be a major obstacle for adventurers to overcome. For example, extreme heat can lead to dehydration, heat exhaustion, and even heat stroke. If an adventurer is not properly equipped and prepared for these conditions, they could be putting their health and safety at risk. Similarly, extreme cold can lead to hypothermia, frostbite, and other cold-related injuries. In snowy conditions, it can be difficult to traverse difficult terrain, and blizzards can make it nearly impossible to see where you're going. Rain and other forms of precipitation can also pose a serious threat to adventurers. Wet conditions can make slippery surfaces, increase the risk of fall and injuries. Heavy rain can also lead to flooding and other dangerous conditions. In real life, adventuring in extreme weather conditions requires careful planning and preparation. Adventurers need to ensure that they have appropriate clothing, gear, and supplies to protect themselves from the elements. They also need to be aware of the signs of weather-related health problems and know how to respond. In contrast, games often don't require the same level of preparation for weather conditions, since they're not typically a major obstacle. Players can be able to simply ignore the weather and continue their quest without much difficulty. Reason number 8 is lack of access to modern technology. Characters often have access to advanced technology that can make adventuring much easier. For example, magic spells can heal wounds, restore mana, or teleport players to different locations. High-tech weaponry can deal massive amounts of damage and even defeat bosses with ease. In some games, characters even have access to advanced technology like robots or flying vehicles. However, in real life, adventuring would be much more difficult without access to modern technology. While humans have been exploring and adventuring for thousands of years, we have only recently developed advanced technology that makes it easier to survive and thrive in different environments. For example, modern backpacking gear like lightweight tents, water filtration systems, and high-energy food make it possible to spend long periods of time in the wilderness. Without these tools, adventurers would have to rely on more primitive methods of survival like building shelter from natural material, hunting or gathering food, and boiling water to make it safe to drink. In addition, medical technology plays a critical role in modern adventuring. In games, characters can heal wounds and restore health with the push of a button or the casting of a spell. In real life, however, medical emergencies can be life-threatening and require specialized equipment and training to manage. For example, a hiker who falls and breaks his leg on a remote trail might need to be airlifted to a hospital for treatment. Without access to modern technology like helicopters, ambulances, and trauma centers, their chances of survival would be much lower. Reason number 9 is legal and political issues. In many games, characters are free to operate outside the bounds of the law. They can steal, kill, and cause chaos without any real consequences. In fact, some games actually reward players for engaging in these types of activities. However, in real life, adventuring could lead to real legal and political issues depending on where you are and what you do. For example, if you were to venture into a national park without a permit, you could face fines or even jail time. If you were to damage natural resources, such as starting a fire or cutting down trees, you could face serious legal repercussions. Similarly, if you were to venture into a foreign country without the proper documentation or permits, you could face legal and political issues. Furthermore, certain activities that might be permissible in one location could be illegal in another. For example, climbing a mountain in one country might be perfectly legal, while doing the same thing in another country could result in arrest or deportation. Additionally, certain activities could be considered politically sensitive or even illegal in certain regions due to cultural or religious reasons. To avoid legal or political issues, adventurers need to be aware of the laws and regulation in the areas they plan to visit. They could also take steps to ensure that they are properly documented and that they have obtained any necessary permits or permissions. Finally, adventurers should be respectful of local customs and traditions and avoid engaging in activities that could be considered sensitive or offensive. By taking these precautions, adventurers can minimize the risk of legal or political issues and focus on enjoying the journey. Reason number 10 is mental and emotional challenges. Characters face physical challenges such as fighting enemies or overcoming obstacles, but the mental and emotional aspect of adventuring are often overlooked. Adventuring would be mentally and emotionally challenging, requiring constant decision-making, problem-solving, and the ability to cope with stress and uncertainty. One of the most significant mental challenges of adventuring is decision-making. In games, a player is often given a set of limited options, and the consequences of each choice are clear. However, in real life, the options are often much more complex, and the consequences are often much less clear. For example, when navigating through a difficult terrain, adventurers must constantly make decisions about which path to take, which risks are worth taking, and how to stay safe. These decisions have serious consequences, and the ability to make sound decisions under stress are essential for survival. Problem solving is also a critical mental challenge of adventuring. In video games, the player is often given a set of puzzles or challenges to solve. However, in real life, the challenges are often much more complex and unpredictable. Adventurers must constantly be prepared to solve problems on the fly, whether it's repairing gear, finding food and water, or dealing with unexpected emergencies. The ability to think creatively and solve problems quickly and efficiently are essential for survival. Adventuring is also an emotional challenge. Adventurers must be able to cope with the stress, uncertainty, and the possibility of failure. They must be able to handle the emotional ups and downs of a long journey, including loneliness, fear, and homesickness. In addition, they must be able to cope with the risk of injury or death and be prepared to make difficult choices to ensure their survival. While it's true that adventuring in real life would be extremely dangerous and challenging, there are also many potential benefits to exploring the world around us. In fact, some people might argue that the hardships and obstacles that come with adventuring are part of what make it so rewarding. So while we've talked about some of the downsides of adventuring, it is also important to consider the potential rewards that can come from stepping outside of your comfort zone and exploring the unknown. Click on the next video to take a look at some of the reasons why adventuring can be such a fulfilling and enriching experience.